All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, art lovers, art enthusiasts, visual artists, creatives across the world. I am Adetiloye Jekami. I am an art curator, exhibition director, idea consultant. A lot of capacity, right? And this is the second episode of Beyond the Medium. This is the second on-site live episode of Beyond the Medium. And today I am sitting with a powerhouse. You might not be familiar with this space, but you have definitely experienced the works of his hands. And this is no person other than Efosa Gideon. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for creating time for us to do this at this point in time.
Thank you for having me. And maybe a brief touch on the introduction. As an artist, my artist name is Efosa Gideon. But if you were to look at some of the things I've done professionally outside of arts, you could check on the name Efosa or on LinkedIn, and you see a lot of my professional work related to art, but definitely not art, but connected to art.
Yeah, so I know I'm very certain that we're going to get to that point in the conversation. So now, starting off, the topic is from unknown to unmissable. How visual artists, creatives, not just visual artists, creatives can build visibility strategically. That's what we are discussing today. However, before we get into that, I would like you to do a short introduction.
Okay, Efosa Gideon is my name. I've been in the arts space for a long time now, but I've actually been applying art for the longest time possible to other aspects that require the services of art, more than the visual arts industry, as you know it to be. I actually attended the University of Benin, majored in sculpture, graduated in 2004. The person who mentored me into becoming an artist is Princess Adetiloye, who many of you know as the first person, female, to ever cast bronze in the history of the Benin Kingdom. She mentored me to become a sculptor. And then while I was studying sculpture, I also had mentorship to study under the Abeokuta greats, the one that's credited with the father of the Abeokuta art school, Kola and Ibe. He introduced me to the versatility of mediums in painting. With him, I got introduced to ink and pastels combination art. I got introduced to the art of impasto painting and all sorts of diversity of mediums, and as well as introduced me to the linear transcriptions of the African folklore, which, as you will find, a lot of the works and background now has influenced my style ever since. So, in terms of what I do as an artist, if you come across my style, there's a portion of my style that focuses on the geometric transcription of the stories coming from our past, our fables, connecting the world to the beauty of the African past, of the African stories, and telling it from our own voices rather than having to let others tell our stories. Within that, I also treat an impasto approach on the same style. So So I feel that comes linear or it comes blended with freestyle and pastel. That's for painting. For sculptures, I mostly coordinate the chaos of junk and scraps. I coordinate that chaos and convert it into art. My style of junk sculpture necessarily doesn't come with a spine, meaning I don't create amateurs and amass junk pieces on them and call it junk art. I see that as a combination of construction and junk. My style actually pick my junk pieces, communicate and spiritually connect with them to give me the directions that they would want art to go. So necessarily, my junk pieces do not come from the thoughts that I have before I encounter them. They actually direct where they come because of how they appear. So I actually do art that, myself, sometimes I don't know what's going to turn out like, but essentially they all stay within the strategic intent. So you will see sometimes that my junk art embellishes aspects of movement. So you will see that I've done a whole lot with motorbikes. Motorbikes themselves. Sometimes I use things like broken down jacks, the jacks with which you raise your car to change your tires. I've converted that to automobiles by just transcribing the broken down jacks. I also have a flair for doing some things around battles, so you can see some of my works having things like weapons and all of that. Understanding that the world, life, and business is a battlefield, so I have some strategies around the battlefield I also do. But I combine all of this swiftly, and then that comes in that form of art. At certain other times, I do African story carvings and also touch on contemporary African scenes in some of my paintings. But that's a summary of what I am in art. And I think maybe much later we can discuss a bit of what I also have done art related, but not in the cliche visual arts industry. Thank you.
Well, I sincerely appreciate how you were able to communicate yourself, because now, communicate your brand. Because now, maybe not brand, but communicate what you are all about as a visual artist, as somebody who is well versed in the creative space. And that's where I'm going to be taking the first. Question. However, before I do that, our topic, like I said from the beginning, is from unknown to unmissable. How visual artists can build visibility strategically. And Mr. Efosa happens to be a brand strategist, a creative strategist, and a visual artist who has worked with brands like Airtel, MTN, amazing portfolio. So the first question I am going to ask now is, most likely what we are talking about is like building a brand.
Exactly.
As a visual artist.
Yeah.
How important is it for artists to be able to communicate what they are all about very well? Because what I've noticed these days is artists focus on the artworks. They don't put much here. So when you see an artist during an art exhibition and you ask them what is the work about, they can't even introduce themselves properly, not talk of introducing like what the artwork is all about. And that is something you were able to do very well, maybe because of your level of experience. So how important is it for an artist to be able to communicate what they are all about and to be able to communicate about their works in being unmissable?
Okay, so thank you. I think that's a very great question. And if you understand, for a very long time I've not been in the visual art space, but necessarily I spent all that time understanding branding, marketing, and helping create helping local and multinational brands achieve great presence in the market. how do you stay unmissable? If I draw from my experience, the first thing you must do is evaluate your surroundings. If you say evaluate the market, but the way you understand that is, what's the art industry like? Do your research, check, what all other artists are doing, check what you are doing, find that gap, find that unmissable gap that needs somebody to explore. And even if you are exploring a gap that appears to have people in it, I always talk about the fact that even in all isms, there are schisms, which necessarily mean that even in the space of geometric arts, even in the space of impasto arts, even in the space of name it, even if you're talking about metal constructions, junk and all that, there is always that space that you can take and then communicate it in a proper and inspiring way that it will arrest the attention of your audience, and then you have a niche. So all of that was explaining how you can have a niche. It doesn't necessarily mean whether you are doing something that appears to have been done by another person, but you must put a skill in how you do it, and then you must be able to explain what you do in a properly packaged way. For example, you mentioned that certain artists are not able to explain their work, and then they appear to be reticent, more introverted, but have fantastic art. I would liken that to the experience one of my best friends in Benin at that time had. Was a youth corps boy coming from UI. He was serving in Benin. And then he mentioned something about one or two ladies that he had met. Very beautiful ladies, just two, but he explained. Very beautiful ladies, well dressed, everything. And then because he was actively looking for a wife at the time. And then when he approached them and spoke with them, the energy went from 100 to 0 because they couldn't probably interact. So that's what an artist would be if he does great work, packages his work very well, but cannot explain what he's doing. Because sometimes it's the stories, how you package your stories, that connect with people who are interested in what you have done. It can be an artwork that appears to have a lot of peers, a lot of competition in terms of how it's done. But there's always that skew as to your motivation, your rendering, and why you've done it. That can sometimes be different. So sometimes it's your packaging. We're coming from the brand space where, if I tell you there's no difference sometimes between product A, product B, and product C in the market. So being in the telecom industry, oftentimes there was no difference between telecom A, telecom B, telecom C. But there was a particular telecom that you understood to be very strong on data, which is something around data is life, with compelling communication materials, TV ads that sold you a story that made you to have the perception that that particular telco brand is the telco brand that you should go for, that you should love. Whereas all the telco brands actually offer you the same SMS, data, and all that. So it's a way stories are packaged. There's another telco brand, for example, who told stories that connected with people, their everyday life, identifying with their struggles, and use some catchphrases, that were within the Nigerian space at that time. And those catchphrases struck the chord with a lot of Nigerians, and they felt that that telco brand was a brand they should love. Take note, actual products, the telco brands were offering the same things. So that's how it is for artists as well. When sometimes you have something that you're able to differentiate strategically by how you've created it, but sometimes the stories.
Yeah, so I'm actually quickly typing down some of the things that came to my head. I'm getting like 5 or 6 questions from everything you said. And I think I will go to the one I feel is most important right now, which is coming up with stories. Now, artists struggle, not all artists, emerging artists struggle with coming up with the right stories. For example, like you said, you might be offering the same thing, and there's the possibility of also falling into that trap where you're telling the same stories as every other person. So, as somebody who has worked like with telecoms company, developing these stories that we see in art, and then we fall in love with them, and different telecoms tell different stories in their arts, and we still get captivated by each of these ones. So, how would you say visual artists or creatives can come up with their own unique stories? Instead of the same repetition of Nigeria is bad, always village, terrorism, like that seems like, how can they come up with their own unique story from the generic situation?
Okay, so the first answer to that is understanding that within the cacophony of similarities are the identities of difference that everybody has. For example, no two thumbprints are the same, right? Which tells you that every thumbprint has a story. And that's just being figurative, so you understand where I'm driving at. The other day I was having a conversation with you, and I told you that even if I tell you, for example, that my two mentors, one taught me to become a sculptor, and he basically does a lot of broadcasting, so you imagine that he taught me a lot of modeling, right? Clay work. And then I also told you that my other mentor, Kola Nidube, the great man of Adetiloye, taught me a lot of all these arts that you see around, geometric African paintings, pastels that love a lot of red and all that. But I do junk, right? I also do junk. I'm not necessarily ascribing that to anyone, but within that junk, I have a story. And everyone has a story that's unique to them. I was raised, and I will mention it, everybody can always check. I was raised in a part of Benin City, Owelu Road, precisely at the end of Owelu Road, where you have one of the biggest motor spare parts markets, where junk, what you call junk now, were heaps that were like the pyramids of Egypt. In those days where these big trucks were selling these metal scraps to metal recycling and repurposing companies to use as metal rods. When they were not doing that, when I was growing up, you would find heaps of these things. And I was living through my life interacting with these metal drums every day, stumbling on them, sometimes cut my leg, every time. And so when I would come to sculpture, even though I already had these ingrained things, I always wanted to do some things that for me would be extendable. And for those who don't understand what sometimes extendable or long means when you talk about ideas, extendable ideas are ideas or missions that you can embark on. And because of one, either your background, your knowledge, or the availability of the spontaneity of ideas in that field, you will be able to sustain doing that stream of art or idea for a long time. So for me, the most extendable idea that originates from my background and experience was doing junk. And in doing junk, I've seen all types of junk. There's no junk that you probably see that has come from a motorcycle or a car that I have not seen growing up. So I've seen all kinds of junk. I've interacted with all kinds of junk. So if I do junk, I'm doing junk from a point of childhood and growth experience. So everyone can have that kind of stories. For example, there's an artist I like, I won't mention them, since big on Facebook. A lot of the paintings he does are the paintings of his childhood stories from his village. And so you see a lot of palms, you see a lot of women riding bicycles around the artists I'm talking about now. You cannot contest that story with him. It's a long
experience.
It's his experience. But take note. It's a long and extendable idea because he lived it. And something that you have lived, for example, is your story. No two thumbprints are the same, and no two persons are the same stories. So essentially, the sky is just wide, and no two beds have to collide. So if you are telling your stories, you should not be telling stories that somebody else can tell. Of all the junk artists maybe, and you will not find possibly an artist that was born in junk who had an experience with the first woman to ever cast bronze in the Benin Kingdom, Princess, the daughter of the king. Right? She was the daughter of the king, Princess Olu.
Mother of
the mother of the great professor.
Yeah.
So you will not have, and then you will not also have that same person who then had a connection, a lived-in connection with the great scholar and everywhere. Himself a legend in Abeokuta. If you go to Kultura, you will see that he is actually painted on one of the pillars at Kultura, which is the biggest roundabout in Abeokuta, right? So a great man who established and coordinated the Women Tourism Foundation for a long time. He also set up and managed the ideas around the Toku tie and dye market. Great legend, right? So you will not have anyone, for example, who has my story, who has connected with all of this.
It's rare to find.
So I'm only just saying that you mention names of any artist, you are rare. So stories are really not difficult to find. I'm just giving you sources of getting story and ideas. But if you were not so confident in that approach, there are also the approaches of understanding the market, looking at where the gaps are, also checking with global trends and needs. For example, there's a particular time African stories coming from Africans in the raw forms was craved, by the world. They wanted to see the African style, and then you can see now the African music is all over this. The
African movie.
Yeah, there are churches in certain parts of the world. They do their congregation and messages in pidgin. They are doing the African way of talking, African dressing. You see different. So there's that African drive to understand this continent, to illuminate this continent. That's also there. So I'm just giving you idea, touch points and pockets where you can actually pull your stories from, but stay consistent, because consistency is the father of publicity. So you necessarily are not saying something here today, and tomorrow you have gone on a tangent that is counterproductive and counteracting to the stories we were telling before. But if you're going to be morphing the stories but have a trend that morphs, but if you're going to be consistently keep telling us those stories, right? So that's the approach, and that's how I think that artists can get their stories uniquely and stay on it.
Wow. Okay, now I'm going to follow up with the next question that came out from your response to the question I asked earlier, which is talking about format. Now, this is a new year. Thank God we're having Beyond the Medium in a new year, and it's 2026. A lot of artists want to move from being unknown, from being unmissable, to gaining that visibility and gaining strategically. Now, what are the formats? It's almost like I'm asking you to do like a step-to-step thing. Like how you would normally do it for some of the brands you've worked with. Like what are the formats now that the visual artist or a creative or an art curator like myself can adopt to now build visibility? And in between, maybe also put in one or two tips here and there to elaborate the steps.
Okay, so added to the fine and applied arts study that I had at the University of Benin, and I would use this medium to also recommend sometimes
here to pass
Okay.
information.
But sometimes you can also attend some out-of-the-box creativity schools, and one of them is Orange Academy. In Maryland, I actually attended that as well. Orange Academy.
Orange Academy.
It's a school that gives brand experience, teaches how you can combine magic, and strategy to achieve some of the groundbreaking things like this. Now to your question. There are so many ways, and with Orange Academy, for example, you will find a lot of templates, right? But I will be talking from that point of view because I have practiced. So I'll give you some of the experiences and approaches that brands have used. First of all, one of the biggest brands I worked on had a formula, right? Not a formula.
Something that they use constantly.
Yes.
Unchanging.
So I'm going to be telling you stories. These stories will change, but the anchor formula doesn't change, which necessarily means that a new story will give you the same vibe and lead you to the same thought and action, but it is not the same story. So this is how you can strategically underpin your stories, even if you tell new stories, but there will be an anchor that comes out even when your stories change, which is the reason why sometimes you see certain brands do different ads in different years. And you wonder, oh, we did this ad that year, it's not doing this brand this year. But behind all of that is a structural anchor. Right?
There's still a focus.
There's a focus.
It just looks different.
It looks different. So the artist can also use that as a source of idea. I don't want to go into the formulas that that brand uses, but you can have a formula, craft it. Once you've crafted that formula to say, okay, my works and how I tell my stories will be anchored on A plus B that is C, right? That's one. Then the second way, which you will find there's an artist that I like his approach. Well, he has a formula, but the different formula also anchors on something that stays on trend. Trend is a big way of getting relevance. And that's why sometimes you see some content creators, they don't have content in themselves, they just latch on a trend, voice over it, and then they become the trend themselves. So trend is a big way. But there's one artist that does something I like. His strategy is very clear. Visual artist. His strategy is very clear. He documents, for example, the contemporary African spaces, epic places, say in Nigeria, but he could extend that to other places in Africa. He goes to those epic places, whether he takes a picture or whatever, he documents it. So if he was doing an exhibition, for example, we are going to be seeing some of the epic places that have connected with the stories of growth of a lot of people. And so if he possibly was showing me the palace of the Academy of Born, for example, he probably has stories of how that palace connects with Born people. Remember, he's not telling you the story now of, let's say, the first story for example. But there is a connection in what he's doing. This is that formula. The stories are different, the visuals are different, even the painting styles are different.
But that's to be epic.
Yes. So he has added 1 and 2 to get this. So let's say I do an epic painting of the local. That's 1. 2, I find how that epic location has affected the people that have interacted with it and affected the country. I spin that into my story, and then I bring that story to the relevance of where we are now. That's 3. So 1, I do the epic painting. 2, I create stories around how this epic painting has affected people living around it. of growth we find in this country that has come through this location. Then 3, I contemporize that story. So it has this, for example, this is fictitious now, because probably this is not doing this, but it has this A plus B plus C approach that it maintains. And you know this consistency of storytelling. I'm just giving you a structure to storytelling. And then we are out there, right? Because you are consistent.
That's a very strong format.
Yeah, there are so many formats. I'm just giving you keys now that normally these are keys that we don't bring out, but again, we are here to grow this industry. Now, there is another one. This one is where you test sensibilities. A lot of brands have done that. Test sensibilities. There's something called paradigm. Then there's something called innovation, right? In innovation, you either make it incremental, which necessarily means, okay, for example, you look at this artwork and look at the artworks of color and you look, they are not exactly the same. But what I've done is done incremental innovation on what he taught me, right? And then brought in my style. But there is this innovation style where something called a paradigm. Paradigm is this structure on which things are done. Where you just take the paradigm, smash it, and destroy the paradigm, and come up with something disruptive that the market has to stand up and see. You remember a certain guy who did the cattle dung maybe? Yes. For example. Let's fight about this. Right? And then you say, no. Mary is so and so, cattle dung is and so it doesn't work. And then everybody's fighting. And then you know sometimes there's no publicity, there's that publicity. Publicity, it depends on how you drink it, right? And so, destroy paradigm. There are artists who, over time, have attempted, and some have succeeded to destroy paradigm, just turn things on its head.
I mean, it takes time.
Yes, create attention. You see, even though this is something educative, I come to your gallery now. I park my car right because there's a law. So just imagine I park at the center of Ford Junction, open my doors down, mount my artwork, one of my sculptures, that is actually pointing to the sky, maybe a madman sculpted. I leave it there and I go. I know I will pay fines.
I think that's what you have.
Yeah, I know I will pay fines. Yeah, I know I will pay fines. I know that the people of this neighborhood are going to come all out.
Who is this person?
I know that I'm going to be wrestled to the ground. I know that thoughts are actually disrupting the sensibilities of people. So that's just an approach. And like I said, if you not just study art, you go to certain schools where disruptive and creative thinking is taken out of the box and not in the box. You can come out of your shell and become a great artist by just following any of the templates. There are more templates, but I will encourage
you know, like 4 or 5.
You understand, but I will encourage you to also go out there and build yourself, be confident, explore, and then you find out that you can go from nobody to something.
Yes, definitely. And I think you're about to say something like you have to be careful. And you mentioned something around trend.
Yeah.
Like sometimes exploit trends, sometimes try to be disruptive, break paradigm.
Yeah.
And I want us to focus on that, and that will lead to the next question, which is, what are some of the mistakes talented artists make today that keeps them invisible? Because there are times when you're following a trend, for example, and then that trend is no longer trending. How do you now sustain, how do you now remain visible onto the next trend, for example? And a lot of visual artists, they make so many mistakes. For example, now you mentioned this format will be disruptive. And there are some who don't want to spend their entire time finding the strategy to be disruptive. And eventually you get it doesn't even work for you. So what are some of the mistakes that you think, not just visual artists, but also creatives when it comes to trying to be visible. Some of them might still be successful and then it fails and don't grow. What are just some of those things? Or generally, what are the mistakes that you think artists can make that will not yield results when it comes to trying to gain this quality?
So I'll give you an example. There was a certain brand that said, no, let's not go there. But so sometimes there are certain things that you must structurally analyze to get to what works for you, so that you can have an extendable run with it. I always talk about extendable ideas, long ideas. Why? Nobody likes that fleeting idea or an energy that you start with and that you cannot sustain. That's why you must first of all understand yourself. Now, if you do not have the energy and personality to disrupt, disruption is not for you. Right?
That's not who you are. Like, you even have a touch of
streets.
your love, lighting, easygoing, any small shakara like this.
You go on massacre. So you leave that space for people who are there that mind. So you must profile yourself, understand what you are capable of doing. Which is why there was a certain brand, I go back there again, who promised that maybe cars will walk on water, this and all that. But you see, at certain points, the management structure of those brands are not able to live up to what the creative agency has prepared for them, because they themselves are not as effusive and as effervescent as the idea
presented
that they now have to live with.
Mm.
And because you can only be but yourself, you will eventually dissociate organically from the idea. So that's just the structure. That's the formula there. If you cannot disrupt, I can, for example, depending on how much I have in my bank account, I'll park my car at the center of the road now. Bring one of my artworks, mount it there, let them hit the car. I don't mind. They take me to the local government council. They are made to probably sit at the back of the counter where maybe they are beating me and then somebody has put me, impounded, all that. Before I do that, I know I have the money, but I will pay fines. I will be used as a deterrent for nobody to ever disturb the peace of the town. Yes, I will be probably, they would
maybe ban you from that street.
Ban me from that street. They will probably do me some mock shots and all that. But isn't that what I prepared? You understand?
And you have already profiled yourself to know that, okay, this visibility strategy works for me.
I can do that here now and go to another state and go and do something that, and then they are taking me everywhere and mock shotting me everywhere.
Like they're not even like bothered.
I'm not bothered, but because as they were doing all of this, they said, oh, he's an artist, he did this type of thing. But that's not how you should have done it. You should have just simply just gone to the galleries and put there. And this is so mad. We must put him in a correctional facility. But that's talk about it. Now, you mentioned something about trend. There is a way to ride on trend. Trend fades, but a formula that rides on trend regenerates.
Because that's the formula.
That's the formula.
Sustaining.
I'll give you an example. There was a brand that did after the October 2020.
The answers.
Yeah, I don't want to say answers, but you are saying answers. After the October 20 whatever, there was a catchphrase. Nigerians were using. Remember that catchphrase? So it was a remove.
Yes.
Remove was converted to an epic ad that won the brand, that brand, the campaign of the year. That campaign of the year award was for 2 years long. I think between 2020 to 2021, those 2 years, that campaign was the best campaign in Nigeria. And then at certain points, I'm just telling you about how sometimes you can come call trends and be relevant. So you will imagine that we move, we become a thing of the past, right? And then at a certain point, the same brand created another ad. It's anchored on not be to be that, right? Anchored on not be to be that, which was the next thing at that time. Just pick things because picking trends help you get into the hearts of your targets faster because they are currently sailing on that trend. So you pick hits, get your target, withdraw, then they also chill, then the next one comes up. But it's how you tell the stories, right? So when Not Should Be That was done, for example, that ad where there was a hologram of a lady that appeared to waiting and everybody ran away. Saying Not Should Be That and all that. Trying to just tell you about 5D and all that. But people got the message in the way that relates to them. So sometimes trends help you stream into the consciousness of the people you are talking to because they understand the trend. Then you find a creative capsule to bring out something from that trend and explode it onto them. And then they already get it because there's a common ground. So trends oftentimes are common ground with which an artist creates well and tell a story and connect. So if you are consistent on using trends, it's already a formula. You're going to also scan the market for the next trend that connects and tell your story in an exciting way the next time to exceed how you told it the first time when you told about that trend. That you are continually exciting the market and continually anchoring on common grounds. It's a formula. So it doesn't mean that I did trend. The trend has died. I've died with the trend. Is there no other reason? Trend.
So if that's your formula, you're constantly looking out for trends.
A plus B equals C.
If being disruptive is your formula, you're constantly thinking of how to be disruptive.
You eat watery beans and garri at the back of cells. But it's a road.
You can trek and say you're trekking and painting, trekking for 10 days and things like that.
There's one of us that often would dress rags, bring some kind of art that. You understand what I'm saying? So it depends on where, and his character, if you notice, that great man has maintained that approach for years because he first of all appraised himself and realized that he had the character to be this daring as stood on it.
So I think I'm going to echo one important thing out of so many vital information that you shared now, and that is the fact that visual artists, creatives need to profile themselves.
First.
So where the mistake happens is if you're not somebody who has, let's say for example, this might sound offensive, if you're not somebody who has the IQ or maybe the resources to exploit a trend in a way that you're tapping into that trend or you're creating something new from it, but people can still relate that is that trend. Like you don't have the resources, the IQ, and then you decide to now use trend as a formula, it now fails. And then you be like, oh, this visibility thing is not working. Or if, for example, you're somebody who, because you see that a person is doing something, and that is not who you are.
Exactly.
But because you see that person doing it, for example, let's say, for example, a visual artist who will take naked pictures, who today will barb his hair, tomorrow is dyeing his hair. You know you are not, like, if you profile yourself, you know, this is not me.
I'm not eccentric.
I'm not weird, like I don't do crazy things to this extent. But because you see the engagement this person gets, you see the way galleries are inviting them for exhibitions and they are going everywhere, and like, let me try this. So, and that's why I want to echo that part where like, it is important to profile yourself. Know what you can do, know what, allow what your surroundings, for example, your resources allows you to do. Don't just say this is working, and then you're just picking.
So to your point, you are actually laying down the formula, even though you are not putting the terms correct. In profiling, in evaluating, evaluate yourself.
Evaluate yourself. Evaluate your capacity, your resources.
Evaluate the art space.
Evaluate
find the
the
gaps,
find the gaps.
then evaluate the macroeconomics. If you understand.
Evaluate the
The
microeconomics.
macroeconomics.
Macro.
Yes. Where is the head of
Python.
the no, not Python. Where is the head? Where is the direction of the world?
And where are you going to?
Where is the world going to? Where is Nigeria going to? That's macroeconomics. Where are we headed? What environmental, social, and other great factors are controlling how people are thinking? For example, there's one great doctor now, what's that called, what it does on sustainability, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And it tells you that recycling these jobs is to help the environment, to create beauty out of the things that maybe pollute or create
Beauty from things that are considered ugly.
No, not ugly. Now this is not art.
Okay.
This is SDG. This is macroeconomics. This is talking about some of the problems that this world has.
Things that would normally harm the health of people, for example, economics.
Yeah. What are some of the problems that some economies are having? What's some of the problems that the world is having? Talk about climate change, which is part of the SDG. We talk about the fact that there's a whole lot of pollution of wastes, right? And you get to see an artist, for example, the strategies of thinking. You get to see an artist now who tells you that it's anchoring on sustainability and trying to help the world by converting this pollutant into great platforms, and that's already, anchoring on how global vision leaders and all of that are thinking. So it's easy for that artist, for example, to relate with countries, nations, strategic leaders, and then he positions himself higher than an artist, for example, who is looking for the paper that was used for Rapakara so that he can create an idea. It's necessarily it's not bad, but in terms of
It's already saturated and it does not even go beyond, probably doesn't even go beyond your microeconomics.
So sometimes it's how you are positioned yourself, but you must evaluate. Then do I have the energy to go this all out? But one of our vanguards in sculpture now, he has the energy, he has the capacity, and then he positioned that high. And positioning that high means that he's able to continually and consistently aim at a higher picture. Meaning because it's a higher picture already, that's where the world is looking at, and you are there. And it's a higher picture. And then if you are aiming at a higher picture, you have already created a limitless and a very big bank of opportunities for yourself, right? And so you also have to evaluate whether you have the capacity. If you don't have capacity like that, are a great artist, you possibly have capacities for some other big level positioning, but you must understand that you have to reflect the art style and ideas that you want to preach, and then you can have a long lasting campaign with that.
Wow. I'm actually taking in a lot that I need to take some minutes to process, but I'm fine. The next question is already there. So now the next question I want to ask, which might form part of the question I'm using to round off now or round up, is now we've talked about profiling, we've talked about evaluating environment and all of that. I want to focus on profiling. Now there are artists who will eventually find out that I actually have maybe the craziness, or I actually have the resources to actually, do certain things in terms of being visible strategically. But then there are voices around them that are for example, I'm somebody who I like to dress formal. I like to, when I wear my native, I dress like an old man. It's neat, it's cultural, it's cautious, dressing and everything. But once in a while, I've noticed that I can be very crazy. So there are times when I would dress like fella, put beret. And I remember there was a time when I was leaving the house and my wife was like, this is not you. You put him on beret, they will think you're a cultist, you know, they will think you're a security man. God forbid, maybe they are chasing one security man now, they see you with beret, they can harm you. Giving me so many reasons for me not to actually go out without dressing. And that actually, in a way, hindered me from venturing too deep into that very crazy, fashion creative part of me. Now, for visual artists who are surrounded by people like that too, who just feel, you know, you're very deep, you think you're a ritualist. Just give them reasons not to want to execute those different formulas or the ones they found out for their own visibility. What is the advice you would give to visual artists or creatives like that who they've identified, they've profiled themselves, they know what works, but now execute, voices are coming to their head and it pushes many of them not to go ahead to execute what fits their profile just because it's odd, it's not expected, or it doesn't fit the standard that has been created. Like, what advice would you give to them?
So I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker. If somebody is not motivated, you are not able to motivate that person. But here is what it is, right? This has two answers. The answer to this question is in the reason why you asked the question, but the answer was already there, right? In doing situational analysis, you complete situational analysis. The question will arise if the person did not completely enumerate the factors around which they should protect themselves, right? So you are now bringing back one of the factors. So he should have evaluated that already. But now, assuming that that's a great question, but here's the answer. There is one brand. They don't do so much. They just show you a guy with a bowler hat with a walking stick and he's moving in one direction, but he keeps moving, right? Do you know what they say when the guy moves? Now, one of the things that you anchor strategy on, strategy has a lot of anchors, but one of the things that strategy anchors on is human truths. And human truths can sometimes be ethnical parables, worldview parables, and all that. But I will tell you what where I'm driving at. The brand says, and this is a human truth, everyone stands aside for
For the crazy person.
everyone stands aside for the man who knows where he's going. So if I know where I'm going, the mini parable phrases it better. He said, no ga ni agbo edame hanya ni joya, which has means he who is going to dominate, who is going to take charge of this world and be successful. He doesn't listen to the whispers of the doomsday birds. Those birds that will come in the morning and start whispering doom. The man who is going to take forth this world will not wake up in the morning and say, doomsday bird, what are you saying? Can you give me some wisdom?
Is it safe to go out?
Is it safe to go out? That's not. Or in contemporary English, somebody who has a direction, who needs to be at a particular place and knows he's going there. He doesn't listen to the side barkings of stray dogs. So every stray dog that says wow, and he says yes, why are you wow me for? And then he starts fighting the dog.
It's just going.
It's going. So that answers your question. But that's me answering in the more traditional.
I feel like that's a very perfect way
But
to
the first
answer.
time, yes, perfect. I know I want to answer like this. But the first time, the question doesn't arise. The question doesn't arise because you already evaluated. And in evaluation, I'll tell you something because now your question brings that up. There is, in evaluation, risk management. You to say, for example, if, let's say, I'm about to drive my car now and I'm going to the airline, what if I'm on technical language and I'm thinking, what if I'm on technical language and it happened to be already Monday, my tire just got lost. And it's hard to pack.
Okay.
So I would probably say if it busts before I get to that Yamaha, of course, that one that goes back to that one, there's a police appointment. I'll just manage to have this. Then I stay with the policeman. Then I change my, there's usually that. So you must have
evaluated everything that relates to that decision you want to make as it regards the profile that you discovered for your personality.
Exactly. And envisage all that could be against it. And prepare the solutions that you then use as they come. Which is why evaluation. I always tell you, direction is better than speed. So there's a reason why, for example, I've been on the other side. I'm trying to get into the art speed. But I'm not so keen on putting all my works out because I do evaluation. Direction, you must understand. Once you have taken that step, they say, once you have put your hands on the plow, you don't look back. Because the plow moves forward. If you know this farm implement, you push it, and then it has this cup shape, keeps plowing the ground.
That's been programmed to continue plowing.
It's an analog machine. It's not as if there's a battery in it. But the analog works in such a way that
It moves forward.
If it cuts the ground, then it recycles itself to cut the ground again.
Not like a spring, so it's moving forward.
So as you move, that's how it cuts the ground. It doesn't understand coming backwards. So that's why they say if you put your hand on the plow, it's not looking back, it's coming back, right? So before you actually set out, make sure that your strategy is tight, because once you're out, then nobody's going to have this to apologize. Oh, sorry, this is not the direction I said. I used to do dreads and paint it white. I can't maintain it. So sorry, I'm going skin.
And that starts to affect your consistency.
Yes.
It starts to affect your direction.
Yes.
So
sorry, I can't maintain it. I need to think about it.
So I think after profiling, because we said a lot of things about like brand visibility, about strategy, about format and formula, I need to echo this point again. Profiling is important. Profile yourself, understand yourself, evaluate yourself, know your surroundings and stuff. And also equally important is the fact that you need to sort of like anticipate things that can be against the execution of your strategy. And then not just anticipate now, prepare, take responses, antidote to tackle those things immediately.
So that's the accompanying.
And I think that is why a lot of visual artists, they remain unknown. Because once somebody discourages them, for example,
we're waiting for the doomsday deck. Once it just like beep, beep, beep.
Whereas if you have anticipated it, and when somebody comes and be like, oh, Unicorn is not working, you have a response, and then you're able to move forward. This would have been a perfect way to end this session, but you make proverbs, and I think that's one of the things that is lacking currently in this age and time. So I will just ask you said two proverbs already, not like proverbs or idioms. Can you say like 3 more that relate to gaining visibility, that relates to strategic execution?
Okay, so out of script questions. Where is this? Like, remember I said the sky is wide enough, birds don't have to collide. So there's no sparrow trying to collide with a canary.
And the man who knows where he's going,
everybody stands aside.
Everybody stands aside for him.
They will stand aside. He knows where he's going, leave the way.
We don't need ways to champion.
Gafara Aya. Then even the short man, when he stands outside, you can see the sky. So it's not only the tall people that have
privilege.
See the sky.
It's not by height.
It's not by height. Short
So, in my own Gen Z or millennial this thing now is, don't let where you are limit how far you can see. Because regardless of whether you're a baby, you're adult, you're a teenager, when you look up to the sky, you see the sky, it's there. No matter how far, no matter how short you are. So don't let where you are, the level you are, limit how far you can see. And I also feel like this also relates to being known and not being missing. Because now, if for example you're living in Adetiloye, in like the ghetto, the worst ghetto of Lagos, but even from that Adetiloye, you can see where you will be in the next 5 years.
Yes.
So if after 2 years or after 2 days of executing your strategy, your security strategy, somebody tries to discourage you, you've seen it, you know where you're going to.
It's a straight line to the sky from wherever you are.
And then you just begin walking like that man, who knows where it's going, and everybody just starts to pass.
There's another one here, and there's this strategy which actually, there was a particular time I love the strategy so much, but I give it out, right? There is something many people do not understand, right? It's called the market sim strategy. Market sim strategy. In Benin, I don't know what Oja is market Yoruba, but you guys call people Oja.
No.
But in Benin, we call people Eki market. Why? There is, in our worldview, there is a big position, big place that the market holds. Why? For many reasons. There are so many life truths that you find coming out from the market. And I'll give you maybe a few, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 pregnant grades. The first is, it is not often the person who comes first to the market that sells the most, right? Not often. Because sometimes all you need to do is understand the period for your customers. It doesn't mean coming by 8 a.m.
or 6 a.m. If that is not the big period, you just say we don't. You still meet that big period.
There's a certain catch phrase in Benin, for example, it's even in contemporary Benin, where they call certain people who sell cooked food, let's say rice. You don't understand banga rice.
I know about that.
Let's say banga rice or example, which is coconut rice and those other south and delicacies, right? There are certain sellers of these things. You know what we call them? Madam Two. You know what Madam Two is? Madam Two means at 2 o'clock, check your time. This woman will ride her cart. There's a cart.
Yeah,
Two-wheeler.
those people sell rice and pepper soup.
On 2-wheelers.
They don't come out in the morning.
No! It's going to sell more than that woman that has been
Show,
show.
AC and everything.
This is the metaphor and the parable of the marketplace. That's why the marketplace is so important in the worldview of the beginning of the people. Another one is the marketplace. It doesn't retain the same faces for so long. Which actually means as you come, you go, another person comes in. So the marketplace is an ever fertile place. It's not for that. Do you know what's the biggest market in the state anywhere?
Biggest market.
Whether it's Baboko, Lorry, or whichever market. Oyinbo market. The people who were running Oyinbo markets, let's say 20 years ago, are no longer there. But now we are cutting time into a small thing, right? So I'm not talking about expanses of time. Even within the same day, the cross-sectional demographic of a particular market space within the same day, varied by a few minutes, changes drastically. Drastically. Which tells you that everybody has a piece of the pie in a marketplace.
Position yourself well and you
Yes.
understand the market.
At 2:30 p.m. at Oyinbo, take the pepper selling woman that sells pepper, who was seated selling pepper, has probably now gone to his asset and has asked the daughter to stay while she comes back. The person who was buying at around 2:30 was a certain woman, who had brought her daughter and had bought 3 wraps of pepper. But by 2:40, as that woman stopped selling pepper, somebody is coming, maybe Brad Timothy. Brad Timothy's wife has handed him to come and buy pepper. So if you check that profile, the Adupe, Mama Risi, they are all come. Brad Timothy is there now. Pastor Mike and Engineer Adupe and Engineer Motayo are in the market now. And then the market continues to go on. So there's no stopping anybody in the marketplace.
So it's there for you to make sure that you're constantly present in a way, not necessarily like present every day, but you're present at the right time when your target audience or your target customer or whatever comes, you're able to supply them.
Yeah. So the 2 variables here is it's not who comes to the market first that says the most. Madam 2 says more than that woman that can buy 8. And it does say that so because everybody is waiting for Madam 2. Madam 2 has won the market. She's only coming to sell.
And she has done it consistently. Everybody now knows she will not miss that time.
Which is why strategists keep right. Madam 2 comes. Everybody has profits to eat Madam 2 price. Then the other one, it doesn't retain the same sellers and the same buyers for long. That's the market. It doesn't retain, that's what I was telling you with Brad Timothy and the Yaris. It doesn't retain the same sellers. At the time, the woman will go, okay, I can come to the market today, my auntie will come and help me sell. And then the auntie is selling today, and then the buyer is different. It was Mama Resi tomorrow, Timothy is buying today. So, the markets, so there is this parable. I've done a lot of paintings on the things I'm telling you actually. And then, for every market scene I have done, if the Benin course, Mogami, we have parables, stories, and that's also a strategy of the market. And you can tell 1,001 stories from the metaphor of the marketplace.
Metaphor
of that marketplace. The marketplace itself is just a metaphor of existence.
The reason why I'm repeating that is it's not enough for you to have a surface understanding of where you want to exploit your story for or where you want to exploit your strategy from. But you also have, there's a need for you to also have like an understanding of what's not even visible.
Yes.
And that's where the metaphor comes in from.
Yes.
That is when you cannot understand the deep stories that, because normally some people like market. Maybe I'll see dancers in the market, paint bakers, and this is somebody telling you, okay, you can actually paint the difference in where you can focus on timing. You can focus on positioning.
On faces, on the transient nature of life. Life is transient. We all come and go. That's the market. The market, everybody comes and goes. Everybody comes and goes. You enter the market, you're going to leave.
You're not going to stay here.
You're going to stay here.
We go.
Security person goes. So the market is a transient place like life.
Wow.
So when you have, like, I have this Life is a Market series where in each of the work I'm telling these parables. An extensible, inexhaustible range of market parables from the beginning culture alone because of how we. Wow. There's even Epinadoese, right? The name, meaning trade, market, selling that is done well. So somebody's name. And that in itself is another whole worldview of truths and possibilities that you find. And that in itself, if I was encouraging anybody, that in itself is a painting. And then you have a consistent, so imagine focusing on market stories and having this array of parables that I am telling you about, which you can find out if you have
your research.
Your research. It's there, it's extendable. Everything you touch on the market scene, touch it in a different way. And the story. So, the reason why I keep telling you, maybe because I've attended all this out of the box schools of creativity where they expand this way, print it out, photographs, stretch it, like the way
Arrange it
and stretch it far. Till I ideas and not short supply. Ideas and not short supply. Just you to do your research and then stand by telling your story. One of the things that we haven't talked about, but we talked about it in past years, there is a mental block. You will find that with the strategies and behavior of people. If you, for example, did anything with sociology spaces or psychology spaces, you realize that some people are held back by their own mental block.
Not even external.
No, it's not external. No, it is. Some people, they are very easy themselves. So I'll tell you how. A child starts by telling, you know, I am a quiet person. I'm the reticent type. I'm the type that doesn't like all these hot things. I'm the type that likes to stay indoors. I'm the type that doesn't know we're talking about that. But sometimes mental blocking is like accepting a chain, right? It's like accepting a chain.
That's not.
It's not even visible. You are creating it.
Yes, no. What I'm trying to say, like accepting a chain that was not put on you, but you put it on yourself.
Backing yourself for convenience.
For convenience.
I'm not an outgoing type, but you are not an outgoing type. Why are you not an outgoing type? Because you have conditioned your brain not to be an outgoing type, right? I'm not the type that talks much. Like, I'm just doing this thing now. The explanation is already there. I don't talk much. I actually don't like publicity. I like to stay behind. Who should have a strategy of failure? How can you say that your strategy in life is not to be known? It's to. Now you are an artist, though. You are an artist.
And you wonder why people are not.
My strategy is that let them just do it. Like me, if it comes to that, I have stage fright. Who told you I have stage fright?
It's just what you accept over time.
Yeah. I can't stand in front of people at all. Who told you that? Because I know. But have you tried to work this? Have you, okay, if you can't stand in front of people at all, why not go take the microphone, address people, work on it, or
You do it.
and so you tell yourself again, if it requires going there, I will send somebody. Just help me tell them.
And then you wonder why you're not known.
Yeah.
You wonder why you're not visible.
Yeah.
You wonder why people. I've been in places where the artwork is on the wall, and then the artist who created that work came in,
Okay.
and people did not know. Whereas before the artist came in, people saw the works and they were like, "Ooh!" And this is a visual artist that everybody knows.
Okay.
They know the name,
But
but they don't know the face. They don't have been hearing about this artist. And when the artist came in, the artist just walked by. So later I was not telling you that, do you know that this artist has walked in here while you guys are gushing about the artist? And the person,
I saw the question about that.
and the person said, no. I said, that's the artist. He said, no, you're lying, you're kidding me. I've been seeing his work everywhere, but I've not seen him one-on-one. I don't know him in person. And then you complain about you not being able to sustain yourself when you don't sell. Because that's another thing artists don't know, that when the people can match a face to the work, it tells the artist. I know visual artists who are running ads now for big companies. So even if they don't sell, once you run that ad, at least you make nothing less that can enable you to buy your material. Yes. And that's not free publicity for you, even if they don't pay. So and then artists keep complaining about, they are not seeing me, they don't know me, they don't. When your own mental blocking has allowed you to